Welcome back. I'm Marky Billson. Just to sort of relate what's going on, though, I'm always against franchise relocation. I still hold the romantic elements of, you know, how when a team leaves a town, it just breaks that town's heart. Brooklyn, New York with the Dodgers, or Baltimore with the Colts, or something like. It always, and I'll tell you this, like I said, a Pittsburgh sports fan, Pittsburgh, one of the many places that I lived, and fell in love years ago with the We Are Family Pirates, Willie Stargell, Dave Parker, those guys, and all this. And so, a few years later, it turned sour for the Bucks. They became a losing team. They were finishing last place every year. And there was a lot of conversation, could the Pirates leave town? And they were really pushing that. Oakland recently had a promotion where it was, if you want to keep the team in town, come to this game. And they had 27-odd thousand people show up, which was significantly greater, about 3 times greater than what their normal attendance would be for a baseball game. What was more significant about this is this was a weekday game. Now, when I was a kid, there was something like this done with the Pirates, too. And it was called Ballot by Ballpark. There was a sports columnist, Bruce Kiden, who had suggested, if you want the Pirates to stay in Pittsburgh, come to this game against Chicago Cubs. And it was a Sunday afternoon game, so, and all this. And they drew 31,000 fans for that game. It was the second biggest crowd they had all year after opening day. So it was effective. And usually it's probably about double what the Pirates would have gotten for a Sunday game at that time. And certainly it was significantly more than it was, at least perhaps 3.5 times more than what they would have drawn for an average baseball game. But I thought they needed to sell out. And I couldn't believe that, if it was all up to, keeping my beloved Pirates in Pittsburgh and all this, is 31,000 enough? I don't know. I went to that game as a kid, I couldn't stand the thought of the Buccos leaving Pittsburgh and being one of those teams. And I remember crying myself to sleep that night because I thought the Pirates were going to leave. I didn't think the attendance was great enough to keep them. Well, thankfully I was wrong. But I'll never forget how I feel about it. And I know there's some kid in Oakland who, if the A's leave to go to Vegas or wherever, is going to feel the same way. And I just have that romanticism. And it's just not enough for me, why, Oakland Coliseum, it's obsolete. You can't have a team there, Well, why? I mean, it's got good infrastructure. My goodness, it's right on the, subway line, or I don't know what they call it in Oakland, but I have been there. And, there's a public transit rail system that has a Oakland Coliseum stop. There's plenty of hotels, restaurants, all this. It's about a $20 cab ride from the Oakland airport to the Coliseum. I mean, the infrastructure is fine there. Well, there was the sewage. It ran out into the dugout. That's not a reason to move a team. That's a reason to fix the pipes. No, it's an old stadium. I'll give you that. Hallways, are narrow. Narrow hallways, I don't think that's enough to make that 14-year-old kid cry that his heroes are leaving town. I just don't. And that's the romanticism of sport. It totally ignores the big business side of it, if you will. But I just think there's something, it's never good when a factory leaves your town. Same thing, it's not good, the identity, and it's a very special business. We all know this. A Major League Baseball team, or any pro sports franchise, college sports franchise for that matter, brings the community together. It doesn't do that at a factory. Nevertheless, so, you're taking something distinctly Oakland and trying to take it to another location, in this case, Las Vegas. I did see a recent snapshot poll, and basically 48% more, it was 48 to 38%. 40 said the A's should not move. So there's a lot of that 14-year-old little boy in a lot of fans that I was crying myself to sleep because I thought my favorite team was going to leave town. And although I do think that in today's day and age, there may be less importance, I hate to say that because they're still going to have taxes. And I mean, my goodness. I mean, going to a game, just the conversation in the streets, that sort of thing. Obviously, it's going to be greater if the team is playing in your hometown than if it's playing hundreds of miles away in a new location and never probably coming back. But you are able to follow teams now away from your home location on an everyday basis, whereas you couldn't do that in previous generations. Still, though, franchise relocation just totally stinks. And as I said, again, I mean, I think you look at, the sort of blasé attitude of Las Vegas. You didn't hear and they partied like only Vegas can after the Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup. You didn't hear that. And I think that if you move the A's from Oakland, whether new stadium, no new stadium, I think you're going to be getting another, Rays situation, or you'll have a diehard fan base of several thousand or so. They'll go to the games. Here we have Major League Baseball. But you'll have a lot of those comp tickets of, we could go to the A's game today, or we could go, this is Vegas. Let's go to a gentleman's club. Let's go do something crazy here. We can go to a baseball game at home. Come on. Who's playing? All right. Tigers? Who cares? I think you could have that. I wanted to also touch upon a little bit what we had before. Just eighth seeds coming around, or teams with absolutely lousy regular seasons winning championships or going to the postseason. I guess the Miami teams that finished with their 8th seed and, advanced to the finals didn't win their titles. But the question, was it satisfying to see, it's a great story. The number 1 team was knocked off by this gritty Florida team. I'm sorry. I want to see David Pastrnak and his 65 goals. I don't want to see, the tired fourth line lose 7-2 or whatever it is, or 9-3 in the deciding game. I don't want to see that. And yeah, why do you play the regular season if you're going to have this? If you're going to just water down the postseason where everybody comes in, where it's just as good to finish in 8th place in your conference as it is to finish in 1st. I'm getting a little sick of these expanded playoffs. Quite frankly, I think there are too many teams in them. And I know you can say that the Bruins this year, okay, well, they joined the 07 Patriots, the 06 Cubs, the 2016 Warriors. By the way, when I say 06, 1906, I'm sorry, Cubs. There are all those. It was a while ago. Tinker's Day, Evers to Chance. You know the poem, what's a gonfal? And it's a pennant. Okay, that's all right. The Steph Curry, 16 Warriors. And the 2001 Seattle Mariners, I think you'd throw the 54 Indians as well in with this. These are all-time winningest teams that didn't win the title. Made a lot of, set a lot of record victories in a season. All these teams in their respective sports didn't win the championship. And there's something wrong with that. Again, well, why did we have a regular season? Now, I will say this. At least the 2016 Warriors and the 2007 Patriots, at least they played for championships. Back in 1906, the Chicago Cubs were beat by the White Sox, the hitless wonders. Ed Walsh. I mean, yeah, this is a long time ago. Great pitcher Ed Walsh, all-time leader in earned run average. And so you have the all-time leader in earned run average in a 7-game series. You know, he starts back then 3-4 times. I mean, you didn't have to go with as much rest back then. Yeah, maybe you do beat this great, 1906 Chicago Cubs team that wins 116 out of 154 games. In 1954, the Cleveland Indians set the then American League record with 111 victories. It was broken in 2001 by the Seattle Mariners, but they got swept in the World Series by the Giants. Now, there was some question that year that the Indians got fat. That year, I mean, even before free agency, there was financial discrepancies. And just to tell you what it was like then, this was the last year of the Philadelphia. We were talking the Oakland days. This was the last year of the Philadelphia A's, okay? They couldn't even afford to pay their uniforms. You had the old Washington Senators known for losing. They didn't sell 500 season tickets in a year. I mean, these teams had no money. It was the first year of the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, these teams had no money. And they were trying to compete against the Yankees, and in this case, the Indians, who had a great pitching staff and all that. So one of the reasons why you might be able to win so many games is in the way the schedule worked back then. You had 66 games against these very undermanned teams that had no money going for them whatsoever. I mean, back then, the old Philadelphia A's, their last season, they had a player manager because they couldn't afford to hire a manager. So you were getting 66 out of 154 games against really inferior competition. You could get fat on that and build up your victory total, and that is what the Indians, and for that matter, the Yankees, who also won more than 100 games that year, did. So you had a lot of teams that had these good winning records and all that. And I mean, so there's something to be said about that. But those teams all did play for championships. Why? One very good reason, you had to finish first. Now, the Patriots 07, we'll get to them, and 16 Warriors here in a second. But yeah, those baseball teams, that was back in the days before you had playoffs. You had the World Series. You won your pennant in an 8-team league, and then you played the other team's best. You didn't play, there's no interleague play. But there was a true champion there. And you could say, after that, I'm giving you the history lesson of the 54 Indians. You could say, even though their pitching staff was just great, well, maybe that New York Giants team with that Willie Mays, maybe they were the better team. Because in this World Series, maybe the National League is better. Certainly it's, in that era, quicker to integrate. That sort of thing. Maybe the hitless wonders White Sox. Yeah, I'm going more than a century ago. With Ed Walsh throwing a spitball and putting up a 182 lifetime ERA. But maybe that does make that team better than this Cubs team that won all these games. Because they have the most outstanding player. And that would have been the case in 2016 with the Cleveland Cavaliers coming back and beating the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't have been the case in New England Patriots, but at least they did go to the Super Bowl. They won their conference. Okay, that's the storybook. That's David beats Goliath. Okay, when that happens, fine. When you have this watered-down playoff system where you have now 8 teams and you don't have to finish in first place in Major League Baseball, that's what it was in 2001 with the Seattle Mariners, which I was going to get to in terms of history. When you are going to a situation of the New York Yankees, of all teams, can knock off this American League champion with more victories, I think it was 116, than any other American League team has ever won, maybe in the playoffs, not in the World Series, maybe you do lose something. Maybe you're championing mediocrity. You're saying fourth place is as good as first. In college football, we're getting rid of the divisions. Second place will be just as good as first place. Anybody watching springtime football? I actually get a kick out of the XFL champion, Arlington Renegades. Okay, they changed their quarterback mid-season, all this. 4-6 regular season team, Arlington Renegades, got hot at the right time. Won the championship with a 6-6 overall record. The Pittsburgh Maulers and Michigan Panthers. The Maulers, the historic lovable losers of the USFL. Now, they're in the playoffs. They're going to play the Michigan Panthers for the right to play for the USFL championship. And that means that a USFL team is going to be playing for the championship after they lost more games than they won. Because you got 2 4-6 teams going at it for the right to play for the title. Now, even if they don't win, what did we play the regular season for? What, I mean, let's let everybody in. I mean, it's a postseason tournament just about. Where is the exclusivity? Where is the value of the regular season? We are championing because we are afraid that there'll be lame duck games for middle-of-the-road teams, let alone last-place teams, that we have to include them, and maybe you'll get lucky. But is that worth really destroying the worth of the regular season? And I think we might see something like this in college football. College football, of course, is going to expand to a 12-team playoff soon, in just about a year. And what that means, and it has a good chance of this, is that in college football, it used to be every Saturday, that was like a playoff game. Because let's face it, if you had lost more than one game for years and years and years, you were not going to be the national champion. Oh, there is a team here and there that might have a tie and a loss and win the title. In 2007, LSU lost 2 overtime games. Of course, by then there was the BCS, but they lost 2 overtime games, and they, won the national championship in football. But one of the things was, why was ABC broadcasting college football games on a Saturday night in September? And you were glued to your set to see, say, back in the day, Florida against Tennessee, to see Peyton Manning against Danny Werfel. And the reason being was that game really had significant impact on who was going to win the national champion back then. And so many of these, these conference games early on, well, you better win that, because you've got to win your division. Of course, we won't have divisions in college football anymore, but you've got to win your division or to have the sort of season where you can contend for a national title. But with 12 teams, there's a big difference between competing for number 1 and maybe trying to be number 2 and playing for that game, or even number 4 and number 12. You can see a 3-loss team with number 12, and so this is the difference. We, of course, have, 68 teams now in the NCAA tournament? And nobody gets excited about November college basketball. Nobody. Games don't really draw that much and all that. There's not a buzz around March Madness. Maybe in a place like Lawrence, Kansas, or Lexington, Kentucky, or something like that. But the buzz has significantly died. You've got a situation now where you can have some really nice out-of-conference, early-season college basketball matchups and some good games. You can have 2 powerhouse programs. I know North Carolina didn't go to the NCAAs last year, but historically, let's just say North Carolina and Kentucky, 2 great historic programs. They've met, November, early December. Nobody watches. Nobody cares. Why? It's anticlimactic. It's not really those 2 teams are probably going to be in the NCAAs. Everybody makes it. They're in major conferences. They're named programs. They'll make it. So it has no bearing on who's going to win the national title. It's really, it's effectively an exhibition game. They get hot in the conference tournament. Hey, that must-watch Saturday night college football game, that Tennessee-Florida, that was must-watch a generation ago, that's going to fall by the wayside. That's going to be that basketball game. We're losing the value of the regular season by including everybody and having participation trophies compete for championships. I'm Marky Billson.